Chris Sylvain 24. This is going to be a video response to you. And sorry that it took me so long to respond, but, you know, as I always say, I'm always busy and shit. But I had some free time right now, so I figured that why not make this video. So I watched your video about evolution and saying how your beef with evolution is not that it's taught in schools, but rather that it's taught in schools, as you say, as fact, when in fact it's not a fact. And you claim that because creationism apparently has as much evidence in support of it as evolution, then it should be taught in schools as well. The alternative, I'm assuming, being that neither creationism nor evolution is taught in schools. And I have some beef with what you're saying, and that's what this video is going to be about. First of all, the entire theory of evolution, I completely agree, is not supported by evidence. I mean, like you said, you expect to find some sort of common ancestor to link the great apes together, and we have not found the fossils of that. However, I think it's, and I will get to that in a moment, but I think the most important thing to realize here is that that aspect of evolution, which is taught in schools, specifically the mechanics of evolution, how genetics works, and how that can lead to evolution and speciation, those kinds of things, the ones that are actually taught in schools, that's fact. We know it's fact because we've observed it. We know the rules of how genetics works, and we have observed speciation. Yes, that is one species through evolution and mutation becoming a different species. We have observed that in the aforementioned fruit flies and bacteria and frogs and such that I mentioned in my last video. So, yeah, I mean, the mechanics of it are truth, that they are fact, and that is the part of it that is taught in schools. And creationism cannot boast anything like that. Or if it can, I've never heard it boast anything like that, and if you think otherwise, then I suggest that you tell me. Now, addressing the problems of evolution. You bring up the point that we have not found a common ancestor to link us all together. By that I assume you mean the great apes, but you might mean all species in general, or whatever. I think what's important to note here is that the idea of a common ancestor is an implication of the facts that we have. So, I mean, the commonly accepted truth right now is that there was a common ancestor, we just haven't found it. And the reason that we believe that, despite having any direct evidence of it, is simply because it is an implication of those facts that we do know for cold hard facts, combined with whatever other relevant knowledge we have about the world right now. The idea that an implication can be true, weighed against any direct evidence we have of that implication, independent of the fact that it is an implication, has been weighed, and we found that the idea of the implication being true is much more likely. Now, of course, if we find some kind of evidence that there was no common ancestor, whatever form that evidence might come in, then of course we're going to say that that particular implication of the evolutionary theory is not true, and that in turn implies that there is something about the world that we don't know. Or if we can go the opposite way, and we're not completely ruling out the possibility that there might be some information in the world that we don't know that would not invalidate the evolutionary theory, but would make obsolete or would completely remove the need for a common ancestor. And of course we don't know that either. And of course there's a third option, which is that the common ancestor is out there and we just haven't discovered it yet. But yeah, I mean, all those ideas are based on cold hard fact, which is, again, the evolution, the mechanics of evolution, speciation, and genetics. So there's that. Now you also point to the fossil record and say that there are gaps in it. that many evolutionary theories are incomplete. You seem to be ignoring the evolutionary theories that are more or less complete. We see this in many of the dinosaurs. We see this in humans. I mean, there's always a few links missing at the ends, and that's always to be expected. But we do see a pattern arising out of this. Now, if we... And the whole problem I have in creationists saying that there are too many gaps in fossil record is you can point to any series and say that it has gaps in it. And if we found intermediate species between even the closest species that exist, you could just say, oh, well, what are the intermediate species between those, and if we found those, and between those, and etc., etc. And that's why I find that argument to be somewhat pedantic. That's not to say that there are not series with huge gaps in them, but once again, the idea that those gaps should be filled with something that we haven't discovered yet is an implication of the evolutionary theory, and not some sort of central piece of evidence that seems to be lagging. I think that's a very important thing to understand. And one last thing, you claim that the Bible, if there's a certain interpretation of the Bible, or possibly multiple interpretations, that would suggest evolution, but I'm just not seeing it. You claim that in Genesis it says every animal begets its own kind, and I have read Genesis, and I can confirm that, yeah, that's in there, but you claim that that passage, or that idea, implies that there's some sort of change within species, whereas I do not see that implication at all. So if you could clarify that, that'd be great. If you have, I just await your response. Again, sorry that it took me so long to respond to your video, but I'm really eager to do this whole debate we're having back and forth. So, till next time, Chris Sylvain, you say best, and to all my subscribers, which you should totally subscribe, by the way, if you're not subscribed already. Subscribe, rate, comment, etc. Yeah, so, I've rambled long enough. Chris Sylvain, I eagerly await your response, and peace out.